Welcome to your May 21st, 2025 briefing on Homeland Intelligence Report. Today's brief will provide an update to the NOLA jail escape, along with a forecast and risk assessment for 2025 summer protests. To close, we will discuss a hypothetical scenario wherein Derek Chauvin is pardoned federally and retried on state charges. In this and every episode, we strive to provide you with brief, relevant intelligence information free of conspiracy theories and unvetted analysis, which allows the mature, educated American to make good decisions regarding the state of the world and threats to the homeland. This comes curated for you by an active supervisory rank law enforcement officer with extensive experience in critical incident management, tactical operations, and public order. I am also a former infantry non-commissioned officer, decorated in combat during OIF, and former U.S. government contract staff member who specialized in intelligence and low visibility, high-threat security. I have significant formal education as well as practical experience in all phases of the intelligence cycle. Through these lenses, I endeavor to read between the lines for you, the consumer, to help you form your own well-informed outlook on the world. No currently classified information will be shared on this channel, ever, period. And as always, we ask that if you are looking for a worthy organization to include in your charitable giving, please consider the Third Option Foundation. This organization works quietly to support the men and women of the CIA's Special Activities Division and honor the fallen operators whose names most Americans will never, and many times can never know. You can make your tax-deductible donations and learn more at www.thirdoptionfoundation.org. A maintenance worker at the New Orleans jail is presently being held on a $1.1 million bond after admitting to turning off the water to a toilet which covered a hole in a cell wall. This allowed 10 men to squeeze through said hole and escape the jail. Furthermore, the inmates' escape was helped by a faulty cell door, which they were able to yank open and remove the toilet. On top of that, the single guard assigned to monitor the area went for food. The inmate's absence was not reported to law enforcement for several hours, 9 hours to be exact. Let's be very clear on this. 10 inmates escaped a jail, including murderers, and the city and state police were not notified for 9 whole hours. For a jail escape, that is a lifetime. Additionally, the city and state police have an incredibly more vast amount of resources, skills, and training compared to the jail staff. The 6 at-large inmates are Jermaine Donald, charged with murder, Antoine Massey, domestic strangulation, rape, and kidnapping, Leo Tate, sentenced in federal court for felon in possession of a firearm, has been charged with murder as well. Lenton Van Bryn, murder. Derek Groves, convicted of 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. And Corey Boyd, murder. So the New Orleans jail allowed a group of exceptionally violent inmates to escape, largely due to staff culpability or incompetence, and then didn't tell the actual law enforcement for 9 hours. The sheriff needs to be recalled, full stop. Going into summer 2025, known in law enforcement circles as protest season, there are a number of factors at play which will influence how that plays out this year. Here are some key contributing factors: polarized political climate under President Trump's second term, widespread daily protests on issues including Palestine, Ukraine, immigration, and policing, high summer temperatures contributing to heightened agitation in public spaces, economic pressures, inflation, unemployment spikes in some sectors, and housing instability, social media amplification of confrontations and misinformation, increased visibility and mobilization of armed militias and extremist groups, eroding public trust in law enforcement and federal institutions, return of large-scale public gatherings and political rallies, post-pandemic restrictions, perceived federal overreach in protest response fueling regional defiance, Currently, the protest demographic in most cities across the U.S. Is older Americans who are protesting federal overreach with regard to the dismissal of mass groups of federal employees, increased talks with Russia, and reduced aid to Ukraine. This is a group which grew up amongst the Cold War, thus entirely distrustful of any Russian influence, while also making up a large part of the federal workforce. These protests have been largely, almost entirely, peaceful, with little interference from anti-faces or black bloc groups. I wonder how long that will last. It seems as though the more violent groups, commonly all lumped together as Antifa, have been keeping a respectful distance from movements like 5051 and Indivisible. I can't imagine much more perceived escalation on the part of the administration before the power dynamic within left-wing activism shifts to a more violent forward-facing movement, similar to what rose up 48 or so hours after the death of George Floyd in 2020. I don't believe it is a coincidence that talks of perjury on the part of then Minneapolis Police Chief Arredondo and now Assistant Chief Katie Blackwell are moving into the mainstream at the same time as pardon. Discussions are being had as we approach the 5-year anniversary of the event. If the former officer were to be pardoned by President Trump and at the same time win a new trial on state charges due to the outright lies told by MPD command staff on the stand at the first trial, I believe that would be like dumping napalm on a fire. If you aren't aware, check out Alpha News and the excellent reporting done recently by Liz Collin. To make a long story short, one of the linchpins of the Chauvin prosecution was the maximal restraint technique, or MRT, had never been trained at MPD and was prohibited by policy. However, pictures have surfaced of the MPD Academy training this technique over the years and its appearance in policy manuals until to 2020 before it was scrubbed in preparation for the trial. Further, the then chief and head of training both testified under oath that it was not and had not ever been a trained technique. This is what is fueling calls for a federal pardon as well as a retrial at the state level, since the chances of a state pardon in Minnesota are somewhere between 0 and 0. Standard disaster modeling and risk assessment matrices break down the potential and likelihood of certain reactions to the above scenario, and they don't bode well for increased time off for cops to go fishing this summer. The impact and likelihood of mass protests turning to riots is both extremely likely and damaging, as are police protester clashes. With those riots comes right-wing vigilante or militia activity, reacting to a threat to their communities and a perceived duty by these groups to protect public places. Major cities will be locked down should protests delve into mass rioting. The more federal overreach or racial bias perceived by groups such as the Socialist Rifle Association and the John Brown Gun Club could even turn into political assassination attempts on cabinet secretaries, congresspersons, state and local officials, or even the president or vice president. Yesterday, we discussed the AQ and Haqqani network threat to the U.S. citizen population. We already can surmise that thousands of terrorist operatives made their way across the border from 2020 to 2024. They are already here and have been here, preparing, arming, and training. Should the summer of 2025 turn into nationwide unrest, imagine how ripe of a target that presents for in-place terrorist cells. Law enforcement will be taxed and spread thin across cities. If it's anything like 2020, there will also be mass retirements in some areas, as many later career cops will look at another round of madness and decide the juice is no longer worth the squeeze. This is a dream scenario for terrorist attack planning. I hope I'm wrong on all fronts. However, I can hope in one hand and make sure my summer isn't too scheduled out in the other. Thank you again for listening. If you feel like you've gotten value from this information, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Look for us on Spotify and YouTube. As always, Be well and be well informed.